Hello everybody and welcome back to Let's Play Creatures Such As We, episode 7. Glad to have you back. This is once again Trillian from the future doing this intro before we get started because I had to cut the last video and break it into 2. So let's get started with this new one, episode 7. Remarkably, it's your alarm that wakes you up, as opposed to a page in the middle of the night from a guest wanting booze or their personal medication stashed stored in sickbay. You actually feel refreshed enough to look forward to dealing with breakfast buffet duties. You could get used to these guests. They're so damn polite. It's too bad they have to leave so soon, but that's just how it has to be. Just continue keeping them distracted. It would be nice to just isolate Grant. I don't really know what that means. It would be nice to just tell them about the evacuation. Oh, it probably doesn't matter what you do. Well, I mean, that may be true of the whole game, but I think we're just gonna isolate Grant. Why aren't we doing that anyway? Anyway, I'm just gonna keep them distracted. As long as they don't suspect anything, they don't have the opportunity to complain or make a fuss. Just keep things going as planned and it'll be fine. Everything will be fine. You fold up your sheets and stretch, contemplating the itinerary. Breakfast, moonwalking, their business meeting, lunch, gymnastics, free swim time, one more night of sleep, and then tomorrow morning, bright and early, they all get shipped out. It's going to go fine today. Today is going to be fine. So let's get ready for it. Quick shower, minimal makeup. We're gonna put ourselves together like yesterday because yesterday, it kept kind of coming up that like, you feel good. You know, you look in the mirror, you see yourself, and you think, wow, I look really professional. I feel really together. So, look good to feel good. We're gonna go with that. You finish up after by brushing your teeth and fixing your hair. You check the mirror really quickly, as good looking as ever. You hasten off to the kitchen to start carting out the breakfast goods, rehydrated scrambled eggs, Repla meat sausages, a few fruits, specially sealed fish, cereals, and the most difficult but underappreciated baked goods. You plant yourself next to the spread. Now the only thing left to do is to stand and wait. Their perk of free entry breakfast means you're tasked to stand around and smile for an hour, to be a scarecrow against greedy tourists taking too much food. Well, and of course, you have to get them drinks if they want it. The door opens right at the start of the breakfast hour, and you smile brightly for James, who seems unusually chipper himself. You greet him. Yeah, good morning. Good morning. James smiles back. Thanks. Say, are they still called mornings here on the dark side of the moon? He gives the food a cursory scan, glances around the room, and sidles on up to you. Hey, listen, I wanted to ask you something since nobody else is here. He glances around again as though to double check. About creatures? Well, games in general. I take it that you liked Elegy, right? Yeah, I feel like I got really close to Elegy. He pours himself an orange juice. Yeah, and you were definitely supposed to. But that's what I'm worried about. I mean, it's fun to have that connection, but there's no place where in-game love interest will ever seriously tell you no. The entire relationship dynamic is up to the player. And that worries me, like, maybe we're not sending the right message about consent? Ew. People can fail at romance games all the time. People just want a simple love story. I don't know how games can meaningfully recreate consent. If gamers didn't find the relationship building fun, they'd just watch porn. Well, I don't think that the relationship building and the porn are mutually exclusive. I don't know. I mean, I guess I feel like a character's romance, like, it doesn't feel like romance at all, really. It just feels like a deepening of that character. Like, it rounds out the character that I'm playing, that he has love interests or that she feels connected to people. So I don't know. I'm overthinking it again. Yeah, well, I can see how they would do that, but yeah. I think people just want their characters to have a simple love story. I'm not sure this is really the answer that I want, but I'm going to go with it. Clearly, I could go down a rabbit hole just thinking about that for a long time. He starts loading up the tray with repla meat, bacon, and eggs. It's true that real relationships are complicated, and maybe these games scratch that itch? I don't know. I'm still worried about there not being a clear enough delineation between the fantasy and the reality. I'm still worried about people getting their cues from the fantasy world and wishing they could apply it to real life. I think most people can tell. So I do think that subconsciously these things can affect us as to like what we think a relationship would be like, primarily if you're younger and you haven't had a lot of experience. But I don't see how we're not doing that with movies or novels and plays and everything else. I once had a man say to me in a bar, "Everything I know about love, I know from the movie Titanic." And I left because that was the most horrific thing anybody had ever said to me. Really? Wow. So, I mean, I don't think it's true that most people can tell. Probably most people can tell the difference between fantasy and reality, but certainly there are a lot of people taking their cues from the fantasy. So I guess the fantasy affects people's real world expectations. But yeah. I mean, I guess you could tell a story that's about consent, but it seems like they were saying about people can fail at relationship games all the time of like, if you don't do the right things, say in The Sims or whatever, you will get rejected. And so that sort of says, you know, it's not automatic consent. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm like overthinking it. He frowns. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe have relationship experts on staff. Maybe get them to weigh in on what makes something healthy. But I feel like that'd just be a surface sweep to weed out totally abusive dynamics. I don't have any good thoughts on how to address the underlying system to accommodate consent. I feel like the thing is, it's not about me and relationships. It's about my character and relationships. Same as if they had a mother or a sister or something else that raises the stakes for them, makes their lives more interesting. And if they have a crappy relationship, or if that relationship doesn't go the way you would want your relationship to go, I think that's totally fine, because it's not about you. It's about your avatar. I almost hate to call him an avatar, your character, and that character having richness and depth along with flaws and troubled relationships. I mean, that's how we were talking before about raising the stakes to make everything more dramatic, you know, for the theater, for games, for whatever. I just think it's not, I just don't think it's important. Consent is a huge issue in our society, but I don't think you're going to solve it by the way to people, by the way your character gets a boyfriend or a girlfriend. You know what I mean? Like, that relationship is on them, and they may be a troubled and flawed human being, and so may be their love interest, and so they may have a troubled and flawed relationship. It doesn't really reflect on me. Completely chaste game. Something else. Okay, let's say a game with real rejection stakes. So it's not just enough, like, that the relationship doesn't take off, but that if you push forward and they don't want you to, that you could really lose something in the game, I guess. James nods. Yes, but how do you implement that? Yes, I know, James. I know. I think you and I think alike. Randomly generated romanceable versus non-romanceable characters, affection thresholds. Any way you cut it, the NPC can always be gamed if you just brute force it like a total creeper. Yeah, that is true. Like in The Sims, you could just go hug, 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 compliment, 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 you know, and just slowly work that thing up. By work that thing up, I mean the relationship bar. Sorry. Well, unless you made a game where NPCs would always reject you, but no matter what you did, but then what kind of fun would that be? I don't know. Sorry, I start reading it in character because I'm just so, like, caught up thinking about this idea. I'm glad people like you are around to worry about this. Yeah. I mean, I think the first step to recognizing that we have a consent issue in our society is just to recognize it. James smiles and blushes. Thanks, that means a lot from you. Does it? He looks at his fully loaded plate. Well, anyway, thanks for indulging my rambling. Oh, honey, I did plenty of rambling on my own. You just didn't hear it. He glances nervously about the empty room, going to grab a seat. He seems a bit uncertain sitting all by himself, but apparently decides to respect your professional duties. You peek at the clock. Just most of the hour left. After a few minutes, Ren and Grant walk in together. It's a relief to see Grant up and about around the other tourists. It will help them think that everything's fine, that there's nothing to worry about. They nod at you cordially and load up their trays, sitting down next to James to chat. Eventually, the three pick up their plates and deposit them politely in the dirty dish bin. You shift your weight and check the time. You've passed the halfway mark. You stretch, then straighten up as Diana drags herself in, greeting you with a long yawn. Good morning. Diana wipes away some sleep from her eyes and starts pouring some coffee before responding, yeah, good morning. Diana sips from the mug and sighs softly before putting the mug down on a tray. She glances at you, then up at the glass ceiling, but the stars are hard to see with the extra breakfast interior lights on. She turns back to you. Why do you think we make art? Oh, for the love of God. These people just really want to talk about the big stuff. They are my parents, represented in 4 or 5 other people. You startle. It's not really something you've given much thought before now. Really? Because we've really been talking about it a lot. Not so much in the... not for a couple of episodes now, but still. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, I should really focus on my work. I don't want to talk art with the artists that I respect so much. I'm gonna say art allows us to collect our thoughts into a certain perspective. Art allows us to communicate with others. Let's go with that. Diana nods as she drinks deep from her coffee. So art is just the way we fix our ideas into a palatable enough form for others to understand quickly? I think there's something to that. It's how we speak to each other, tap into the universal human experience. But what about art that doesn't have a voice? Art without a message? Do you think that art needs to actually have something to say? Oh, well, I sort of meant, like, I don't know what I meant. Again, because, like, communicating with others encompasses that moment in which the artist and the viewer come together. It is a communication, even if it's asynchronous. But it doesn't have to have a message. Sometimes the message in something is just, here's an experience, maybe an experience of beauty or peace or joy or horror or whatever. Here's a little piece of experience. It doesn't have to say anything about that, like, oh God, zombies are horrible, or oh, this flower is so beautiful, or this waterfall or whatever. But if it gives you that experience for the moment, that is communicating something to you of like, look at this, and then you look at it, right, and take it in. So I'm sorry, I'm rambling again. Art is still art if they can get their own message out of it. Sometimes it's just a matter of sharing an experience without commenting on it at all, I think. Yeah, let's go with that. She lets out a deep sigh. I mean, I suppose technically that's true, but what's the point of making art if you don't have anything important you wanted to say with it? What is it, just artistic small talk? I don't get it. And it's even worse in video games. There's so much high-bloom, unoriginal crap out there. It's even more frustrating when you're trying to make something new, something with a message. Oh, she wants to have a message. Okay. She continues on. Do people value deeper meanings in their games, or is gaming all wrapped up in the superficial appeal? Oh, I think if you want to have, yeah. I think that's the thing people are pushing for more and more these days is story, right? And story is a message, even if it's ambiguous. Hamlet is ambiguous, but it's still a story, right? That we appreciate and can filter through our own experience. A lot of gamers prefer philosophical challenges over skill challenges. People love games with good stories that speak to them. That's it. People enjoy all aspects of the game working together. People play games to enjoy the fantasy, not that speak to them. And if you're speaking to them about something important, great. Diana breathes out a sigh of relief. Yes, I suppose so. But I still think that a lot of people are confused about exactly what a good story means. They get overly focused on self-fulfillment. Anyway, it's a good point. All hope is not lost. Diana glances down at her empty tray as though just remembering its existence. I guess I should actually get something to eat. But thank you for hearing me out. I really do appreciate it. She distractedly spoons a bunch of random foods onto her plate and then goes to sit down. You don't even have time to look up at the clock before Sadre and Andres enter the airlock. They giggle at the spread. Andres makes a crack about the food being the same as back on Earth as the two of them load up their plates. Andres gets fairly close to warranting a ration-reminding cough, but they leave to sit down with Diana before you have to resort to that. After a few minutes, they all three finish up and walk out laughing. They wave you off as they leave. You're left alone with all the trays to replace and the leftovers to put away. The glories of being a space tour guide. At least the moonwalk is next. That's always the high point of any visit. And then tomorrow, they'll all be gone. That sinks in. Oh, tonight's the last night you'll ever see any of them ever again. You feel a little empty just thinking about it. But then, of course, that was always going to be the case, even if you'd had a few more days together. It's just such a rare treat to meet tourists who are so interesting and friendly. You'll miss it. And that looks like a pretty good stopping point. So we're going to call it here. And we'll be back for the moonwalk. And apparently more deep conversations about art. I hope that you don't mind my rambling on it. I'm going to repeat James's apology. Because these things are fascinating to me, and they're the kind of thing that I could talk about for quite a while, as you can see. But I'm really enjoying the game. All of this makes it all so much more enriching. You know, talking about having art with a message. This is, in a very meta way, about art having a message. You know, the message is, should art have a message? But it is interesting, I'll say this, that I'm getting caught up enough in the story that even though it is meta, it doesn't feel meta. Like, it feels like all of a sudden I'm realizing, wait, I'm playing a game. I'm working with a piece of art that is asking me these questions about itself, essentially. But it didn't feel meta when I was going through it because the characters feel real and my character feels real and I feel really engaged in it. And so it doesn't feel meta, which is kind of interesting. Anyway, thanks. Be well.